Yellow birch, fire tree.
Hello, I'm White Wolf, Ways of the Wild Institute up here in Vermont. And as you can see, it's still winter. Actually, we got a long way to go. It's only the very beginning of March. It's warming up though, which is kind of nice. But when you're up here in the North Country and you want a quick fire with the use of flint and steel, one of the best tinders to get a hold of is the yellow birch tree right here. And as we did a close-up to begin this short little video, you saw that on the yellow birch, you get all that real fine curly paper bark material, which is unlike the paper birch, which has the long white sheets that you've seen in some of my other videos. This is the yellow birch. It doesn't have that sheet bark formation. Instead, it has that curly fringe, kind of like a fire stick. Instead of shedding in one big piece, it sheds in little teeny pieces. Now this stuff is excellent for quick fire starting, especially if you have a spark. It catches a spark and it blows into flame very easily. So the first thing we want to do is gather some of this off the tree. Comes off real easy. You just grab it off in handfuls. And this is all dead bark, so peeling it off the tree does not harm the tree at all. This is kind of like your hair. You can cut your hair, it grows back. So I get a nice handful of this bark. The next thing we need, because this is kind of wet snow because it is March and the temperatures are warming up. It's deep, but it's wet. We want something to put underneath this so we can start a fire. So what we need to do is find a tree that has some dead peeling bark off. That's the easiest thing.
Now this is perfect. This is a red maple, and yes, it is alive, but looks like this red maple was damaged at one time, and so the lower part has got a bunch of dead sheets of bark hanging off. And so what I'm going to do is grab some of those pieces of bark, lay them down on the snow to make a little floor for my fire lay.
Now you see here how I laid down these pieces of bark here to keep my tinder off the snow. Now once I have the fire going, it doesn't matter because the fire is going to be hot enough where the fire can burn down through the snow, and eventually, if I burn the fire long enough, it'll burn down to the ground. But for now notice first of all here how much yellow birch bark I gathered. Okay. Now I don't believe in the philosophy that a lot of so-called survivalists, wilderness survival teachers and whatnot have, and they say, use the smallest amount and do things the hard way. Well, this is the wilderness. This is life, and my opinion is life is hard enough in many areas. Why make it harder? When you're out here in the wilderness, you've got to remember that it is not the absolute technique. It is not the absolute perfection that's going to keep you alive. It's using your brain. It's planning ahead. It's being patient and calm, keeping your wits together. That is what keeps you alive in the wilderness. whether that's in a wilderness living situation or a wilderness survival situation. It's planning ahead. Now notice this is a nice dry day. The snow's wet, but sun's actually peeking out here and there. The bark is dry. My tinder is dry, okay? Don't wait until it's pouring down rain to get your tinder, because that just makes life harder. Instead, plan ahead. Say, you know, it's cold, it's wintertime, I'm gonna eventually need a fire. It's dry out, so gather your tinder when it's dry. Put it between the layers of your clothing to keep it dry. Keep it from getting wet. Don't put it against your skin, because the dry tinder will actually absorb the moisture of your skin and get damp. Put it between the layers of your clothing. Now what I'm doing here is I'm working my tinder. You can never work your tinder too much, but you can work your tinder too little or not enough. See, right here, this is your yellow birch bark. You see how it's kind of in strips with all this curly stuff hanging off? Well, you don't want to try to get this to catch a spark, because it's not going to. What you need to do is you need to work it into a fine shredded nest, just like shredded paper. And so you want to keep shredding these sheets of bark until you have a nice nest here. Now notice how much I have, all right? I'm not working with a teeny little bit. It's available, and so I'm going to use it. Again, make things easy on yourself when you're out here. There is absolutely no reason to make things hard. Now, if you're in a really set up situation out here and you want to challenge yourself and make it harder, fine.